I guess one of the questions upon everybody's lips as they read Swedenborg's Heaven and Hell is, what does it feel like to die? In paragraphs 449 and 450, Swedenborg describes the process of death and also the awakening into life in the spiritual world. I'll let you read it for yourself, but just note here a few of the things that I learn from that description. Firstly, it is a gentle experience. We tend to think of death as inevitably traumatic, but I suspect that that is not actually the case. A month ago, Pam and I were cycling in Tasmania and I came off my bike. A stick caught in my front wheel and I went over my handlebars. And while I never lost consciousness, I have no recollection of the time between my sudden loss of momentum and being on the ground tangled in my bike, which had landed on top of me. I cannot recall the impact with the trail. I cannot recall what caused my various cuts and bruises, nor any sense of pain associated with any of those injuries. And so, tied with Swedenborg's account in this chapter, it looks to me as though death itself is not really to be feared. Secondly, I notice that we are nursed through the process by angels of varying degrees and good spirits, and indeed the Lord himself. It seems we're in good hands. But we're also in absolute freedom, and we're left to determine our own spiritual destiny. Interestingly, we find in these paragraphs the inspiration for the Swedenborg Foundation's YouTube channel, Off the Left Eye, occurring when we begin to see spiritual realities for the first time. But what really stands out to me on this reading is said towards the end of the chapter, and that is the fate of those who have confirmed themselves in that disbelief of the life of the soul, that they are, for the most part, attached to some infernal society because they have also denied the divine and have despised the truths of the church. So is reading Swedenborg a kind of spiritual life insurance policy, just in case heaven is real? Well, it's worth making an important distinction here. There's a difference between those who have merely not believed in any life of the soul and those who have confirmed themselves in that disbelief. Swedenborg writes, "For so far as anyone confirms himself against the eternal life of his soul, he confirms himself also against whatever pertains to heaven and the church." You know, we get so wrapped up with the idea that accepting heaven and the church is about accepting a particular set of doctrines or religious teachings and doing that intellectually, that we forget what heaven and the church is really all about, which is the practice of the principles of love and wisdom in our everyday lives. So, to confirm ourselves against heaven is to reject loving action and to justify that rejection in our own minds. It's the mentality that says, life is only about enjoying my life here and now, with no thought of the consequences, and at the expense and exclusion of everyone else around me. Such people reject the notion of life of the soul because it is distasteful to the life that they treasure here and now. And these are the ones who have confirmed themselves in that belief. Now, I know plenty of people who identify themselves as atheists, and whilst I'd love to convince them otherwise, I don't believe for a moment that atheism as an intellectual position necessarily condemns them to hell. And I look forward to welcoming many of those people into heaven. If you want a really good literary example, I can recommend Dean Koontz's novel, the face, whose villain illustrates that confirmation very well. So what do you think about this distinction between those who merely don't believe as compared to those who have confirmed themselves in that unbelief? We'd love to read your thoughts in the comments. As always, you're welcome to read along with us or read ahead if you prefer. You may have questions you'd like to pose in the comments. Enjoy the journey.